Hi guys, it's Vanessa from 360 Coaching. Welcome. Good evening to everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar. I'm sorry if it's been a little bit tricky to find me. I've had a few technical issues, but that's all sorted now, so it's great to have you here. And I trust that you're going to get some great value tonight in this webinar. So why are we here? Why are we here? I'm not talking the big existential question, why are we here? But rather, what are we going to do and what are we going to discuss in tonight's webinar? In this session, what we're going to do is you're going to discover how and why stress is stopping you from having the life you truly deserve and how you can turn it around. In this session, we're going to be talking about stress and the symptoms of stress, some of which you may not even be aware of, how stress affects us and what we can do about it. And I'm also going to be teaching you a simple technique that you can use today to get you out of stress and overwhelm and back into a position of control so that you can start creating the life you want and deserve. So who would be interested in that? Fantastic. Awesome. Brilliant. Looks like everyone's up for it. Great. So I really encourage you to write questions or comments in the side panel, as I'd love to be able to answer your questions and know what you're thinking and feeling, as well as what you're relating to. And if I speak a little bit too quickly, which I can do when I'm excited like now, just let me know and I'll slow it down again. So, who am I? Well, that's a great question. Before we jump into tonight's content, I'd like to give you a snapshot of who I am and why I'm experienced to talk about this. So I'm a qualified life coach who has got a very special interest in stress and anxiety. Why? Well, I was someone who experienced chronic stress for almost 30 years. In fact, I wouldn't call it stress. I'd actually call it anxiety. And it started when I was about 7, 8, 9 years old. And I was a kid that was just that, just one of those little worrywarts. And it progressed into something even more worry as a teenager. And by the time I hit my early 20s, I was just an uptight, stressed out, not always fun to be around kind of person. Not that I knew that I was stressed, I just didn't feel overly relaxed or comfortable within myself. I started off my working life in advertising, then I worked in a few radio stations, blah, 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 blah. Was having a great time on the outside, but I just couldn't enjoy any of it or feel calm within myself. I was meeting really interesting people, meeting celebrities, blah, blah, who cares? But I just was always worried. Was I doing the right thing? Did people like me? Was I good enough? And even though I seemed to be living this kind of cool life, lived with a boyfriend, I just couldn't relax. I just felt stressed and uneasy all of the time. And this uneasiness turned into more constant worry and anxiety. And every now and again, every few years, I'd have this full-blown panic attack. But I had no idea it was a panic attack. And if you've ever experienced one, you'd know that they can be quite horrifying and scary. So I was having those, every now and again. I decided that radio wasn't quite for me, so I quit, went overseas, travelled, came back, broke up with my boyfriend, thought the whole world was going to end. And I just couldn't couldn't relax, thought this isn't what I'd pictured. My sisters were married with children, most of my friends had boyfriends, and I was just kind of there, very much the third wheel. I went back to uni, I studied natural medicine, returned to working in radio, and just kept thinking, what is this all about? What's happening to my life? I just felt stressed that I should be doing this or I should be doing that, and that nothing was happening. Then in my early 30s, I met my now husband. We have 2 beautiful children together. I was working with disadvantaged young people. We earned good money. We had great friends. We went on holidays and even though I had what seemed like a great life and the life that I wanted, I just still couldn't relax or enjoy it fully. I still felt on edge on a lot of the time, and I felt as though happiness was just out of my reach. I didn't really know it, but I was just living in a permanent state of stress and fear. And this stress and fear totally impacted on my life, and it stopped me from being who I wanted to be, which in essence was a calm, happy, relaxed person. Stress was stopping me from living the life that I wanted. And then in my late 30s, after, decades of stress, I had what you'd call a nervous breakdown, and I slumped into a pretty awful depression for about 8 months, maybe a year. It was not a fun time and not a fun place to be in. But looking back, I'm actually glad that happened, because it forced me to take a really good look at myself. And it forced me to take stock and see what was actually stopping me from living the life that I wanted. And if I hadn't have had that breakdown, I'd still be miserable. I'd still be doing the same things over and over and not getting anywhere. I'd be doing that whole cliche of, doing what I've always done and getting what I've always got. And I'd just be miserable and unhappy. But what I discovered through having this breakdown, or whatever you want to call it, what I discovered, which totally turned my life around, is what I'm going to share with you guys tonight, so that you don't have to get to that breakdown moment in order to live the life that you want. Who's up for that? Brilliant. Fantastic. Okay. So what is this thing called stress? Okay, the Oxford Dictionary defines stress as a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. And it's defined as something that causes a state of a state of strain or tension. So stress is a normal physical response to events or situations that can make us feel threatened or upset in some kind of way. When you sense danger, whether it's real or imagined, the fight, flight, or freeze reaction, or the stress response, kicks in. And this stress response is the body's way of protecting you. When it's working properly, it helps you to stay focused, energetic, and alert. And in those emergency situations, stress can save your life. For example, it gives you the extra strength to defend yourself or jump out of the way of an oncoming bus. So it can be a lifesaver. It also helps us to rise and meet challenges. It's what keeps us on our toes in job interviews. It sharpens our concentration when we're delivering a speech. And it makes us study for an exam when we'd rather be, flopping on the couch, watching a DVD and eating chocolate. But beyond a certain point, stress stops being helpful and can actually start causing serious damage to our health, our moods, our relationships, our productivity, and our quality of life. So here are some examples of symptoms of stress that you might already be aware of, and perhaps some of which you're not aware of, and the way that stress can affect us. So there's some cognitive symptoms like memory problems, constant worrying, the inability to concentrate, poor judgment, focusing on the negative, anxious and racing thoughts. There's also some of the emotional symptoms like moodiness, crankiness, or being short-tempered, agitated, or just that inability to relax, feeling overwhelmed, and that also that comes along with sometimes that feeling of being overwhelmed is that sense of loneliness and isolation. And often when we're chronically stressed, we get depression or general unhappiness. And usually if you're anxious or stressed for an ongoing period, depression enters and walks in and becomes anxiety's best friend, and it likes to overstay its welcome. Some of the more physical aspects of stress are aches and pains, diarrhea and constipation, nausea, dizziness, maybe some chest pains, loss of libido, frequent colds and digestive disturbances. And then there's the behavioural symptoms such as, eating more or less, sleeping too much or not sleeping enough, isolating yourself from other people, which I mentioned before, and procrastinating or neglecting your responsibilities or putting things off. And then there's the unhelpful crutches like using alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, or too much TV to relax. And then there's nervous habits like nail biting, pacing, jittering legs, things like that. So how's everyone going so far? Does that make sense? Are you seeing yourself in any of those, or do you know people who experience that as well? Yeah, I mean, we've all experienced that, so it's nothing new. But when we cut right down to it, what stress is really about is fear. We're stressed because we fear something. Not being able to meet a deadline, not being good enough, fear of not being interesting at a party, or fear of not being a good enough partner, husband, wife, fear of failing, fear of not passing an exam. The list goes on and on and on. And then if we take that to an even deeper level and get right to the core of those fears, it's a fear of, am I good enough? It's a fear of, am I worthy? A fear of being judged, and a fear of not belonging or being rejected. And this is a universal fear. When we cut right down to it, that's exactly what stress is about. And it's really, really, really common. So the question I want you to ask yourself right now, after hearing all of those symptoms, is, are you living a full life? Are you living a relaxed life? If not, then fear is probably standing in your way, and the reason why you've jumped on this webinar tonight. Who does that resonate with? Yeah, I mean, it resonates with all of us. And to be honest, fear ruled me for decades, so I can completely relate to probably anything that any of you are feeling right now or have felt in the past, and it's exhausting. So what I want to take you through, something else, and I want you to listen to the following symptoms which indicate that stress and fear are either in your life or perhaps dominating your life. Some you may not even be aware of as being symptoms of chronic stress or fear. And tell me if any of these are familiar to you. So there is constant impatience, regular exhaustion, feeling of being out of control, feeling easily overwhelmed, self-righteousness, being constantly misunderstood, being a martyr, just feeling numbness to your feelings or a general fogginess about your emotions, guilt and shame, easily defeated, making excuses, procrastination, or saying sorry a lot. Who can recognise some of those, or maybe even all of those symptoms in your life? I've certainly experienced each and every one of those symptoms many, many, many times. Yeah, great. I'm just checking my Facebook thread. Yeah, absolutely spot on. Thanks, Sophie. So how does long-term stress and fear affect us? Great question. I've already highlighted some of the mental, emotional, physical, and cognitive effects of constant stress. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail about that, but long-term stress can cause high blood pressure. It can cause pain, insomnia, diabetes, cancer, skin problems, digestive disturbances, lowered immunity, obesity, depression, anxiety, and much, much more. Interestingly, as just on obesity, a bit of bonus information for you about obesity. Did you know that obesity can be caused by constant stress? What happens is that when we're stressed, the hormone cortisol gets released, which helps us in the fight, flight, or freeze response. You know, it used to help us back in the caveman days when we were running away from saber-toothed tigers, but now we don't really have saber-toothed tigers. Our saber-toothed tigers hang out behind our work desks. So when we've got chronic stress, cortisol is constantly being released, and one of cortisol's function is to increase our appetite. So we end up eating a whole lot of the wrong foods when we're constantly stressed. So stress really takes a toll on our waistline. So if you're overweight and consistently stressed, it could be the stress that's contributing to your weight gain. But back to the point of how stress affects us. What's even more interesting to me, and what seems to affect most of my clients, is that stress actually stops us from living the life that we want and living the life that we deserve. So stress and fear can completely immobilize us. Stress and fear keep us stuck. Stress causes us to procrastinate. Have you ever wanted to do something like start a business, maybe ask someone out, join a sporting team, ask for a raise, go for a promotion, but just felt too nervous, so you did nothing about it? Well, that is fear disguised as procrastination. And as well as that, stress and fear also stop us from finding solutions to our problems. It literally makes us narrow-minded to the point where our brain closes to the answers. It stops us from being creative and developing ways to get what we want. So what can we do about it? This is another great question, and I'm going to share some of the answers with you now. So to get out of stress and overwhelm and start living your life properly, you need to do a couple of things, and they are: detach from your thinking. Watch your focus, because what you focus on is what you get. You need to use empowering questions. You need to be aware of your language. And what I think are the two most important steps which help facilitate every point that I've just mentioned above is that you need to get out of your head and into your heart. And I know that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but stick with me. And you also need to realize that what you're doing is what I like to call feeling thinking, and I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean soon. Some more bonus information for you on fear. Unfortunately, what most people do is wait for the fear and the stress to go away. I'll do it when I feel more brave. I'll do it when I've got more courage. I'll do it when I feel more confident. And this basically causes people to do nothing in the meantime. And then after a period of doing nothing, they beat up on themselves for it, and the cycle continues. But what they don't realize is that fear never goes away. It just never goes away. The courage and the bravery that you're waiting for is only ever required. Sorry, it doesn't arrive when you don't need it. That courage and that bravery only rocks up when you need it, i.e., when you're scared or when you're stressed or nervous. So the only way to get rid of the fear, that fear of taking the next step, or that fear of creating a business, or that fear of leaving a job or ending a relationship, the only way to get rid of that fear is to do the very thing you feel fearful of. That is the only way to take the fear away. But what happens is we end up avoiding the very thing that we know will actually make us feel great once we've done it. So we need to do what Susan Jeffers says in her book, which is to feel the fear and do it anyway. All right, but back That was an aside. Back to the 6 points, and in particular, back to point number 1. Now I seem to be having some technical issues. Oh dear, what's happening here? This could be a stressful moment, couldn't it? All right, back to point number 1. The first thing is to detach from your thinking. Realize that a thought is just like a cloud passing through the sky. The sky doesn't try to cling to a cloud because it looks lovely and fluffy and white and perfect. And the sky doesn't try to get rid of a cloud because it's too grey or angry looking. The sky just lets the clouds be there and float on by. And you can do this with your own thoughts. Just be aware of them and let them float through your mind. Don't try and hold on to them. Don't try and push them away. Just let them pass through your own personal sky. Secondly, watch your focus. As I said before, what you focus on is what you get to the exclusion of all else. Have you ever wanted a car or wanted to go on a holiday, and then suddenly you saw that car and ads for that holiday destination everywhere? It's because that car or the holiday has become your unconscious focus and you're unknowingly searching for it. And it's the same with your thoughts. If you focus on life being stressful, then you will find evidence of stress everywhere, and you'll quickly build a case for your life being constantly stressful and overwhelming. I remember when I first became pregnant. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, there were pregnant women everywhere. Everywhere. It was like they were taking over the world. And I'd never noticed pregnant women before. And it's because that's what was happening on my unconscious level. I just was focusing on pregnancy. And so therefore my mind sought out evidence of pregnancies. So if you focus on life being stressful, hey, you're going to find evidence of it. Conversely, if you focus on life being a joy, fun, exciting, then your brain will start looking for evidence of that, and it will start creating that kind of life. Thirdly, it's really important to use empowering questions. Often we use really disempowering questions that start with why. Why can't I have that? Why is my life so hard? Why does this keep happening to me? And what happens when we ask these why questions is that your brain answers these questions, and usually your brain answers them in a very unhelpful way, such as, well, you can't have that because you don't deserve it, or because you're lazy, or because you're not good enough, or because you're an idiot. And that's not particularly motivating. It doesn't put you in a position of power and certainty. So you've got to ditch those questions, ditch those why questions, and ask how questions. So how can I have what she has? How can I have a fulfilling job? How can I be more relaxed? And your brain will start looking for the helpful and supportive answers to those questions. So instead of saying, why can't I have that? Ask, how can I have that? And your brain will come up with the answers such as, ask Sophie, she's done it before. Or there's a book on achieving XYZ. Your brain will just start looking for the answers, and it will be way more helpful for you. Way more helpful. Next, just be really aware of your language, because our language creates our reality. It creates our world. Use dramatic, worried language, and you'll have a dramatic, worried life. Have positive language, and you'll have a positive life. I was talking to a client the other day whose life is very dramatic at the moment, very overwhelming, and everything is a drama and everything is a problem. And I said, to this person, are you aware of your language? Are you aware of every time you're talking about something, you're using disastrous language, terrible language, I can't believe this is happening language? And it was an aha moment for her, because she realized that when she uses that language, it creates that feeling internally, and then that creates your reality. The first time this concept was introduced to me years ago, I was talking to a woman and she said, just be really aware of your language. And, you know, if you use dramatic language, you can have a dramatic life. If you use positive language, you'll have a positive life. I looked at her as though she was an alien. I thought, are you for real? As if language can affect the way you live. And she just very calmly and politely and compassionately said to me, okay, that's cool. But what I want you to do between now and when we next meet is just notice people's language. So I did that. And what I found was that people who were living great lives used great language. They used positive language, excited language, motivating language. And I noticed that people who were living less than ordinary lives were using really negative, dramatic language. And from that moment, I realized how important language is. So I've got some key replacements for you to take home today. So if you've got pen and paper, I'd really encourage you to use it now or quickly grab some. So first up, I want you to replace I can't with I won't. I won't gives you a choice. Saying I can't puts you into a weak position. So I can't come to dinner tonight. Replace that with I won't be able to come tonight. I need to do something else. It puts you into a position of choice. Another one, which we use all the time and we're not even aware of, is I should. Replace I should with I could. Again, this gives you a choice, and it also takes away guilt, I've found. So I should go and visit my mother becomes I could go and visit my mother, or I could choose to do something else. So it takes away that guilt and gives you choice. Another great one to replace is it's a problem with it's an opportunity. The first one, it's a problem, is whingy whiny. Oh, it's a problem. The other is a learning opportunity. Because in every problem, quote unquote, in every problem there is a learning opportunity. There's a way for you to grow. So put a positive spin on the stuff that happens, which you could view as a problem, but you're now choosing to view as an opportunity. The next one to replace is I hope and I wish. Replace I hope and I wish with I wonder. I hope I get that job. I wonder if I'll get that job. And then the brain starts looking for possibilities of it happening. And then finally, replace if only with next time. So if only I had more eye contact in my job interview. Replace that with next time I'll have more eye contact in an interview. One makes you a bit of a victim. Oh, if only I'd done that. The next is next time, this is what's going to happen. You can really feel the difference. One is, oh, the other is, this is what's happening. So it puts you again into that position of power. So introduce these into your vocabulary, introduce them in your day-to-day language, and let me know the difference that you experience. I'd love to hear from you. As I said before, when we're stressed, we're overthinking. And when we're overthinking, we can't find the answers to our problems. Essentially, we can't think our way out of overthinking, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is that if we keep thinking about our stress, all we're going to do is magnify the issue and then feel even more stressed or overwhelmed. We need to stop. When we stop, the answers appear. That's often why people say, I'll sleep on it, or I need to take a breather. It's because in those quiet moments, insights and answers have the opportunity to appear. Have you ever had an experience when you just were trying to remember someone's name and you just keep thinking and thinking and thinking about what their name is, and you just can't remember their name? And then later, when you're quietly doing the dishes or you're sitting on the couch relaxing, boom, the name just pops into your head. Or how about, creative people who say that inspiration and moments of genius come to them in those times of quiet? It's because in those moments of stillness and calm, the answers have the space to surface and appear before us. But how do we stop? How do we stop this overthinking and worry? Well, this is critical. This is a really important part, so I want you to take note. You stop by getting out of your head and into your heart. So I'll say it again. You stop by getting out of your head and into your heart. We will never find the answers to our problems by overthinking them. We can never solve a problem with a busy mind. It's physically impossible. There is a physical reaction that occurs in our brain when we are stressed. When we're stressed and busy in our heads, our brain literally narrows its firing to only a few areas of the brain, which then diminishes our capacity to think creatively and find solutions. Hence, the term becoming narrow-minded. We are literally becoming narrow-minded because there's just a small strip in the brain that's fired to. Conversely, when we're relaxed, the brain fires to so many different parts of the brain, which enables us to see, which it actually enables us to use more areas of our brain and to find the answers that we seek. Hence, we have an open mind. So to be more open-minded, we need to get into the heart space, or if that's too woo-woo for you, we need to get into our creative space. Because it's in this creative heart space, whatever you want to call it, that we can access the inner calm and quiet, which is in fact always residing within us, ready to be accessed at any moment, even when we're totally stressed. So that inner calm and quiet is always there waiting for us to access it. So in a moment, I'm going to share with you a quick and simple technique to do this. Okay, so I just want to check how you're all going. Let's just see if there's, yep, great, you're all good, beautiful, beautiful. If you've got questions, please just keep on putting them in the question box and I'll just check the other feed. Great, good. All right. So before we move on to accessing that inner quiet, I just wanted to touch on a final point, that thinking, feeling point that I was talking about before. Point number 6, let's see if I can find it. Yes, that bottom one here. Realize that you're thinking, feeling. So what I mean by that is when you are stressed or when you are angry or when you are depressed or whatever negative state you are in, all that is happening is that you are feeling your thoughts. Huh? I hear you say, what are you talking about, lady? This is a really important point that offers so much freedom. So I want you to listen really closely. And it's a concept that deserves a lot more attention than this webinar can offer tonight, and something that I will go into way more detail down the track. But basically what that statement means of feeling your thoughts is that at any moment you are only ever feeling your thoughts, nothing more, nothing less. So when you feel like crap, it's because you've had a crap thought that's maybe just popped into your head really quickly, maybe not even in your conscious mind. Or when you're feeling angry, it's because you've just had an angry thought. But even more interesting than that is that the thought actually has no power. We've just decided that it's an angry thought, or we've just decided that it's a depressing thought. It's just a thought. It's not a truth. It's just something that you've all of a sudden decided, that's what that means. So if you can allow it just to pass through like a cloud in your sky, you'll be able to move through and just realize that feelings are transient. They come and go quickly. So I had a client recently, I'm going to call her Amanda. Amanda came to see me because she was totally stressed, worried, and overwhelmed. She was in a constant state of worry and anxiety about everything. And as a result, her relationship with her husband was suffering. She was alternating between getting really irritated with her kids and then feeling guilty about getting cross with her children. Her health was in a really bad way, and in a chronically bad way. She was always fatigued and tired and had no energy, and she couldn't really even manage the runnings of her house. And she just wasn't able to enjoy anything in her life anymore. She was basically existing on the wheel of fear that we were talking about before. So what we did together was we explored the various aspects of her life, and we looked at how those different areas were a problem for her. And we got really, really clear on what Amanda actually wanted out of life and who she wanted to be. And we looked at her ways of thinking and how her thinking impacted on her life. And we looked at how she related to herself now and how she really wanted to feel about herself. And we explored getting out of her thoughts and connecting with her heart and her inner wisdom. And from doing this, what Amanda was able to achieve was a more compassionate relationship with her husband. She became far more relaxed and playful with her kids. Her energy improved. She was able to stand up for herself more, which she hadn't been able to do for a long time. And she had better personal boundaries, which she wasn't able to do for quite some time up until that point. And she also trusted in herself more. And she felt a sense of happiness that she hadn't experienced for a really, really long time. So one of the techniques that I used with Amanda is what I'm about to take you through now. And it will only take a handful of minutes. And it's about being in touch with your heart. So I'm just going to take a sip of water. Excuse me for one moment. So it's about getting in touch with your heart. As I've said, when we're anxious, we are in our head. We are worried about our health. We're thinking about what might go wrong. We're imagining that people are talking about us. We're imagining being alone. We're imagining not being able to pay the bills. We're imagining that our kids are in some sort of trouble. Our business or career is about to fail, and the list can go on and on and on. When you get into your heart, all of that mental noise and mental rubbish just falls away. Now, I can't personally take credit for this technique. It actually comes from the HeartMath Institute, which is an amazing organisation that studies the heart and the heart rhythms and how the heart rhythms affects our mental, emotional and physical health. And they've done a whole bunch of research, and they have found that the heart has a direct impact and influence on our nervous systems. And they have found that the heart actually has its own brain and neurons, and that more communication goes from the heart to the brain than from the brain to the heart. and that in fact the heart can tell the brain what to feel. Totally fascinating. This is amazing that the heart can do this. And even better than that is that we can actually control our heart rhythms by using the technique I'm about to share with you. And if we can control our heart rhythms, we can tell our brain what to feel. Awesome. Now, it's a simple breathing exercise. So what I want you to do is just to get really comfortable in your chair, have a straight but relaxed spine, and just close your eyes or cast them downwards, whatever feels comfortable for you. What I want you to do is I want you to breathe in such a way that your inhalation and your exhalation are the same breath. So you breathe in for 5 counts and you breathe out for 5 counts. And you just breathe in and out through your nose. So I'll do this with you. So it's in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. And at the same time as doing this breathing, I want you to imagine or sense that you're breathing in and out through the area of your heart. So as you breathe in, you imagine that your breath is coming in through the area of your heart around your chest. And as you breathe out, you're breathing out through the area of your heart. And just continue to do this, breathing in through your heart and out through your heart. And just continue. Meanwhile, I want you to bring to mind a heartfelt emotion like gratitude or love. Perhaps think about something that makes you feel grateful, makes you feel love. Perhaps it's a family member, a child, a partner, a beloved pet, a spiritual leader. Whatever it is that makes you feel gratitude or love. And when you have this positive, heartfelt emotion, see if you can grow it from around the area of your heart to your whole body. And it's okay if you can't grow it just yet. Just notice the feelings coming in and out through your heart area. And continue to breathe in this manner and enjoy being in your heart space for a little bit longer. Okay, and when you're ready, I'd like you just to come back to this webinar. Fantastic. And what did you think about that technique? How did it feel for you? Yeah, thanks, Julie. Yeah, it's a great method. It's incredibly grounding and it can really take you back into a space of calm and clarity really quickly. Yeah. Thanks, James. Brilliant. So that's the technique that you can use that instantly can get you out of that space of overthinking, of over-worrying, of stress. Takes you out of that busy mind where you cannot solve a problem and it gets you into that heart space or that creative space where the answers appear. Use it any time you feel that you're getting that way. So guys, that brings us to a wrap for tonight. I trust that this has landed with a lot of you. I've shared some really simple steps that you can start using right now to end those stressful thoughts and start living your ideal life. So to recap, what we've covered tonight is how to detach from your thinking. Watch your focus. Use empowering questions. Use those how questions. Don't use those why questions. How? How can I? Be aware of your language. Your language creates your world. Your language creates your reality. You now know how to get into your heart space more, and you also now know that any negative or stressful feeling is happening because you're just feeling a thought. But before we end tonight, guys, I will let you know that I have a 5-week online course coming up where I'll be talking more about how we can really embody a life of calm and happiness. In this course, we're going to be talking about what I've touched on today, but we'll be going into far greater detail and looking at how you can truly access your inner wisdom at any moment, even when you're in the throes of stress or worry. And it's by accessing our inner wisdom that we're actually creating a space for our ideal world and our ideal life to unfold. Solutions appear, mental and emotional states are changed, and life becomes much, much richer. No one needs to keep living a life of stress, overwhelm, and unhappiness. It's a waste of time, and it's tiring, and it's boring. I've done it. I don't need to do it anymore, and neither do you. So this course helps you to get out of that mental noise and into a life of happiness, calm, and inner peace. You'll learn more about language. You'll learn to let go of those stressful and worrying thoughts. You'll learn how to consistently focus on what makes you feel good and ditch the stuff that doesn't. You'll learn how to access your inner wisdom and strength in any given moment, regardless of how stressful the situation is. And you'll see your worry for what it really is, nothing, even though it feels like it really is something. So I know some people will have some questions. So I have been able to set aside some time to talk and find out what your roadblock is and what's preventing you from moving forward. So I've only got a limited amount of space left. So jump in quickly for a 20-minute one-on-one with me. You can contact me on these ways. Probably best to send me an email at 360coaching@live.com and we can set aside that one-on-one time. So again, I'd really like to thank you for taking the time and joining me tonight. I trust you got great value from it. And I thank you. Thanks, Sophie. And I will, thanks, James. I'll hang around now for another 5 minutes if anyone has any questions that they'd like to have answered. So otherwise, thank you again. And I look forward to connecting with you really soon. Take care.